We begin with the president's decision to try to block the release of prisoner abuse photos from over in Iraq and Afghanistan. Anthony Romero is the executive director, the top guy at the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. They brought in the big boys for this one. The group has argued in court for the release of those photos. And Pete Hegseth, an old friend of this show, he's an Iraq War veteran. Thank you for your service, Pete, again.
Thanks,
he's
Chris.
chairman of Vets for Freedom. First of all, I want to go to Anthony Romero, who's been on this case for how many weeks have you been fighting this thing?
We've been fighting it for 6 years. Not
6 years to get these pictures out. Why is it in the interest of, well, the country or civil liberties, the things you fight for, that we see these god-awful photos?
Well, no one wants to look at the god-awful photos. But we as a country have to go back and look at the crimes that were committed under President Bush's watch. And these photos will show incontrovertible proof that torture did indeed occur. And we have Vice President Cheney flying around the country saying, we didn't torture, we didn't waterboard. Show us the photos.
Have you seen them?
No, I haven't seen them yet.
Have you got any description of what they show?
I've talked with high-level government officials who've told me that we expect more than 2,000 photos, worse than Abu Ghraib.
Worse than Abu Ghraib.
So when the president says these are not inflammatory, I don't believe it.
Well,
I don't buy it.
Pete, why shouldn't these photos be released? Now, you find yourself perhaps in this argument on the side of President Obama, but why do you think he's right?
Oh, he's absolutely right. He's right because he listened to the sound advice of his commanders on the ground who told him out front, that that attacks will increase, that we will lose American lives if these photos are shown. If you look at the 10 days following the release of the Abu Ghraib photos, attacks increased 200% across Iraq. They saw that. They understand what happens when we give this propaganda to the enemy. That's what the ACLU is trying to hand over. Propaganda to the enemy. Anthony has not seen this enemy. I have, and hundreds of thousands of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans have. They understand the danger we face and that our enemies will use this against us. I applaud President Obama for having the courage to stand up and not release these. He did the right thing today.
Do you think we should abandon any use of anything that could be called torture for the same reason, Pete, because it can be used against us in the field?
Well, no, I think
if pictures of it does trouble to us,
sure,
wouldn't the knowledge of it do just as much trouble? The knowledge that we torture,
sure,
isn't that equally as bad as the pictures of us doing it?
Why is the ACLU going after pictures? Because it's sensationalizing, because the media grabs on it. They can show it everywhere because it will expose, and they can drag the Bush administration through the mud. They don't care about the outcome of the conflict on the ground. Thankfully, President Obama does, and he's doubled down on Afghanistan. Okay. He wants to protect the troops there, and that's what this is about, and
just
I applaud
remember,
him for it.
I warn you, you're talking about motive, and you have no idea what's in another man's heart. I don't, you don't. Here's President Obama talking late today about why he won't release those photos. Here he is agreeing with Pete Hegseth here.
These photos that were requested in this case are not particularly sensational, especially when compared to the painful images that we remember from Abu Ghraib. But they do represent conduct that did not conform with the Army manual. The individuals who were involved have been identified and appropriate actions have been taken. The publication of these photos would not add any additional benefit to our understanding of what was carried out in the past by a small number of individuals. In fact, the most direct consequence of releasing them, I believe, would be to further inflame anti-American opinion and to put our troops in greater danger.
One of the things we do on this program before each show is to try to figure out what's going on every possible level. Anthony, some people think that what Barack Obama, the president's doing there, is trying to slow down the rush to prosecute torture.
Absolutely.
Well, in other words, you agree. You both. He sees the release of these pictures potentially as something that will rush the public to punish the torturers, and that's what you want to happen.
Let's unpack.
No, that's what you want to happen.
I do want that to happen.
So you both see it the same way with different goals.
When crimes have been committed, we need to prosecute and investigate them. And the president, with all due respect, is flatly wrong when he says that these crimes have been prosecuted and they've been investigated.
He says all the cases are closed.
No way. The highest-ranking person who was prosecuted for crimes of torture was a lieutenant colonel who was later on acquitted. There is no way you're going to tell me that with 2,000 photos that go throughout the theaters of war, that these were a few rogue apples.
Well, that does conflict. Pete, according to the report, a bipartisan report signed by people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham of the Armed Services Committee of the United States Senate said that this came from up the line. That this abuse of prisoners at Abu Ghraib and elsewhere came from up the line. It did not start at the non-commissioned level or even the junior officer level. If that's the case, have we done justice here?
I think President Obama, I couldn't have said it better than what President Obama said today. And if you want to talk about justice, the reason the photos even came out of Abu Ghraib and the reason these photos would ever come out and see the daylight is because the military did its own internal investigation, prosecuted and found guilty what the members had done. Absolutely, it is true.
That is not true.
That is how Abu Ghraib came out.
Let's talk about
there was an internal military investigation on Abu Ghraib.
How high up the chain of command did it go, Pete? According to the prosecutions of these officers, how high did it go? Did it go any higher than Lieutenant Colonel?
That indeed is above my pay grade, but I can tell you that the people that I served with and the intelligence officers I served with did everything they needed to do within the law to get active intelligence so my guys could go out and find the enemy and kill the enemy and win these wars. And it was not about...
If we went out there in the field right now... we talked about this today. I want to get this done on the air right now. If you ask the American people right now if they want these pictures released, I don't know what the result would be. If you ask military families, however, your answer first, Pete. Military families would probably say don't release the pictures, right?
Absolutely not. That doesn't represent our service. It doesn't represent what happened.
They don't want them released, right?
And it's because it's not representative of what happens on the battlefield. Bad things happen, and we'll deal with that internally with the military processes.
Let's deal with the facts here. Americans, we believe in the rule of law. We believe when you break a crime, you do the time. If those photos show that crimes haven't, in fact, been committed, then people need to be held accountable.
Those individuals are doing the time right now, Anthony.
I'm sorry, sir. That's not exactly the case. We have less than 20 prosecutions, the highest level being a lieutenant colonel who was acquitted. We need to have those photos so we understand the gravity of the crimes. And the fact is, it doesn't fly when the president says that to release these photos will inflame the public. We've released 4 torture memos in clear English, unredacted, talking about the torture techniques that were authorized by the Justice Department. Now, are words any less inflammatory?
Is there any way to find a middle ground here? I want to ask you, Pete, first. Would you have objection to these pictures going to a commission that would look at these pictures and decide if there was a requirement or a need for further prosecution if people have escaped justice here? Would you be for that?